Close your eyes, take a slow breath, and let the soft wind of the past seep into the corners of your mind. Imagine yourself not here, not in this age filled with artificial light and machines that never sleep. Imagine you are somewhere far from glass, from iron, from comfort. We are going back to a cold, wet morning around the year 1349, in a small village deep in the heart of Europe. The sun has not fully risen, just a gray smear hanging above fields wrapped in mist. The air feels like damp wool clinging to the skin. There are no cars, no electronic chimes, only the faint whinny of a hungry horse and the breath of animals waiting behind unopened doors. Today, like yesterday and like tomorrow, begins in silence and will be lived in quiet. You are a widow, not young, not old, and not protected. Your husband died in the plague that came without mercy. He burned with fever in the morning and was buried by night. No inheritance was left, no legal documents, and no law stands on your side. The small home once built together now feels too silent, too large, and too fragile. No hand holds yours as you sleep. No one says good morning. In a society where a woman's honor clings to a man's name, you are now only a shadow of a life that once held a name. But morning still comes. It always does. And though no one greets you, the earth still needs tending. Bread must be baked, and fire must be lit, so your body does not freeze. This is your life now. There are no kings in your story, no castles. Only mud, solitude, and duty. Imagine your bare feet touching the cold earth as you rise. There is no neat wooden floor, only hard-packed soil that serves as the ground for everything. Thin straw clings to your skin, and the morning air creeps in through the cracks of dried mud walls. You did not sleep in a real bed. Just a piece of coarse cloth laid on the floor, perhaps with a bundle of dull wool that used to be your wedding blanket. There is no pillow, no heater, and certainly no light except from a single gap in the roof, lending a pale trace of moonlight before morning truly arrives. Your body is stiff, your shoulders feel heavy. Women like you are not given time to mourn their wounds. Grief is a luxury reserved for those with enough food to forget it. Meanwhile, your hands tremble as you try to light a fire with stones and sparks that do not always obey. There are no matches, no candles. Only the will not to freeze pushes you to try again and again until a small flame appears from the dry straw. That kitchen is more like a dark corner with a clay oven, and the only water is collected from last night's rain. You must ration it, because if the dry weather continues, there is no guarantee there will be more water in the coming days. You sit in the corner of the room. Alone, there is no sound except your own breath and the restless clucks of chickens outside. Mornings like this used to be filled with your husband's voice lighting the fire, or perhaps the cries of your child who is no longer here. The plague took more than time can return. You just stay still. For a moment, you look at your cracked and scarred hands. These are not signs of resilience. They are simply proof that life never granted mercy. A new day has begun, and nothing will stop it for your pity. No hand will come offering bread or a shoulder to lean on. Only tasks arriving one by one, and hunger that will follow you like a shadow. The day moves slowly, but the burden quickly gnaws at your back. After lighting a small fire, you grind the leftover grains that even the rats hesitate to eat. Some of the flour you store in a clay jar because the only certainty in your days is uncertainty. Not everyone eats every day. You must ration even from your own hunger. There is no breakfast, only water mixed with grain crumbs and perhaps a piece of dry roots soaked overnight. Outside the hut, the frozen ground begins to thaw, but not from warmth, only because the night's cold yields to the cold of the day. You walk slowly to the small field that was never truly yours, for land is past 2 suns, and you have nothing. But memories of your husband once digging that earth with bloodied hands. Now your own hands hold the hoe. But you do not dig for harvest. You dig to survive. You know if the crop fails, there will be no replacement. There is no cheap market, no church charity unless the priest happens to be merciful, and that is rare. The village only notices widows who are still young and beautiful. You are no longer young. Your beauty faded with the long nights of waiting without hope. Your neighbors do not speak to you. They believe grief is a curse. Some even whisper that your husband's death was a punishment. You neither deny nor protest. You simply bow your head and keep digging. In this world, silence is safer than truth. You know if you fall today, no one will help you rise. The only thing that will embrace you is the earth itself. Between digging and pulling weeds, your eyes sometimes glance toward the dirt path that leads to the stone church. There, the bell does not ring for you. The bell only tolls for births or celebrated deaths. You are something in between. Not a baby, not a corpse. Just a widow whose life is not considered a meaningful part of society. You know this because when your husband was alive, people greeted you. Now, even those who once shared bread with you lower their gaze when you pass. On that cold afternoon, you sit for a moment on the muddy ground, the stalks of grass brushing your fingertips. And you think perhaps even grass lives a more orderly life than you do. They grow, then die, then grow again. You only walk without direction. As the day wanes and the sky fades like old cloth, you return to the hut. On your way back, you pass children playing in the mud, barefoot. They laugh, but not at you. Their laughter is like wind that does not greet you. They are not afraid of you. They simply do not see you. A stray dog runs past, its bones like broken lines in a painting. No one chases it. Even the dog knows there is nothing to steal from you. Upon arriving home, you place the empty basket in the corner, sit on a burlap cloth, and look out through the small window without glass. Just a hole, just air. Sometimes the night wind carries voices from another field. Male voices, voices of life. But not for you. You only hear them, no longer part of that world. As the night thickens and the sounds of nature shrink into a hanging silence, you sit hunched at the edge of your straw bed. No candle is lit tonight. It is too expensive for a flicker that serves no purpose. Tonight is like the nights before, dark, cold, and long. The only sound that keeps you company is your own breath, and the small bubbling of an empty stomach. In the corner of the room, a mouse moves slowly, unhurried, knowing there is no food to compete for. You do not drive it away. It is the only creature that acknowledges your existence, even if only for the hope of crumbs. In that darkness, you recall the time when your husband was still alive. Not a beautiful time, not entirely, but a time when your name had a place. It once made a sound in the spaces of others. Now, even you rarely call your name in your mind. It's as if life continues without needing to remember who you are. You lean against the cold clay wall, and it feels like leaning on the back of the earth itself. Flat, not warm, not cruel. Just there, like your fate. Outside, the moon appears faint behind the clouds. Not full, not a crescent. Like your life, hanging between two shapes. Never whole, never gone. You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to stop seeing. In that dark, nothing demands you to be anything. Nothing reminds you that you are a widow. Not a wife, not a mother, not anyone. Just a lump of breath surviving the night because there is no other reason. Morning does not arrive brightly. It merely shifts from thick darkness to a damp gray, like an old, unwashed cloth. The air remains cold, and your bones feel sluggish to move. There is no sound of roosters, for no one keeps them here. Only a thin morning wind slips through the cracks in the wall and stings your skin like fine needles. You rise slowly, not from eagerness, but because sleep offers no comfort. Today, like yesterday and likely tomorrow, holds no clear direction. You take a small clay vessel and head to the well along with a few other women, all silent, each trapped in her own burden of thought. They are widows too, or abandoned by husbands who never returned from war or died from wounds. No one speaks much. In this world, conversation is a luxury. Strength is spent on survival, not on words that do not feed. At the well, you draw water with a coarse rope that peels your palms. The water is murky and heavy, yet it is the only source of life. You do not wash your face, nor wet your lips. The water must be saved for cooking later. On the way back, you avoid the gaze of a young man standing near the cornfield. He is not your son. But sometimes, when the night is too quiet, you wish someone would look at you the way a child looks at a mother. But it does not happen. You are no one. Not a wife, not a mother, not young. And here, that means you do not matter. Upon returning home, if this place can be called a home, you place the water in a clay container in the corner of the room. The walls are still cold and slightly wet with dew. You eat slowly, the wooden spoon scraping the edge of the bowl, its sound becoming the only one that keeps you company. Outside, the day begins to shift. The sun, which earlier felt cold, now sinks slowly behind pale clouds. Shadows stretch across the ground, and time passes without a sign. There is no hourglass, no bell. Only the feeling in your body, telling you that the mealtime is nearly over. You set aside the leftovers in the corner, maybe for tonight or tomorrow morning if it hasn't spoiled. Wind slips in through the cracks between boards. It carries the scent of smoke from a neighbor's house and the smell of damp earth mixed with waste. These moments are the quietest of the day. No one is looking for you. No one is waiting for you. Widows rarely have a place in conversation, let alone in prayer. If they speak your name, it is usually in whispers and blame. Once you had a name. Now they call you only the one left behind. Those words are like an eraser, slowly removing every trace of your existence. Even your clothing has lost its color, worn and patched many times, making you barely distinguishable from the cloth that covers the window. There is no mirror in this house, but you don't need one. You know what your face looks like. It's not because you remember, but because you feel it. The face of someone no longer remembered and no longer feared. The packed dirt floor has dried into cracks, and the only thing that might be called furniture is a short stool with one leg missing. You light a small fire with straw and dried branches saved from days before. The sound of the fire is not comforting, only a signal that something can be warm today. You mix the water with barley gruel stored in a sack, hard and moldy at the edges. No spices, no flavor. Food is not something to enjoy here. It is merely a delay to hunger. As you slowly stir the mixture, you think about the coming day. There is no steady work for a widow. Sometimes someone in the village asks for help weaving, pulling weeds, or mending cloth. But all of it is paid with hard bread, or sometimes only a sip of sour milk. You cannot refuse. There is no luxury in choosing. Outside, footsteps can be heard. Village children run, carrying bits of bread and laughing with each other. But no child stops at your door. They are taught to avoid women like you. Sorrow, they say, is contagious like plague, and widows bring misfortune. That belief stands, and it becomes an invisible fence that keeps you alone. After the gruel is warm enough, you sit cross-legged on the floor, facing the door that never truly closes. Work time arrives like warm air, slipping in without a sound. Not because a noble task awaits you, but because life continues even when no one is watching. You rise slowly, clearing the leftover gruel, still clinging to the bowl. Then place it on a stone near the wall. Today, you plan to mend the torn cloak because the wind of the season has begun to bite. The thread you have is no longer strong, and your needle is bent at the tip, but it's all you've got. While sewing, you sit near the light that spills through the cracks in the wood. The light is not warm, but bright enough to see what is thread and what is wound in the cloth. Your hands tremble from age and hunger, making each stitch feel like a test of patience. In that silence, a vision of your husband passes. Once he used to fix doors or patch roofs, and all you had to do was fill his plate. Now you sew alone while straining failing eyes. Across the street, you hear a child crying, followed by a shout. You don't know who slapped, but you know the pain. The sound disappears as quickly as it came, like many things in your life. Sometimes you think not all suffering needs an end. Some of it simply stays quiet, like you. Lingering, settling, and never leaving the house. Afternoon arrives slowly, with no purpose. No visitors, no letters, and certainly no good news. Only heat settling in the corners of the house, making the air feel like a weight that cannot be lifted. You walk to the old well, taking slow steps, to avoid falling. Once you could run there, laughing with neighbor children who are now married women or buried long before their time. The wooden bucket hanging at the end of the rope is cracked like everything around you. The water is murky, but you drink it anyway. There is no relief afterward, only a duty fulfilled. Beside the well, wild plants grow that you do not recognize. They grow without watering, and that makes you envious. Because you, a human with will, must always ask and wait for life to continue. You water empty pots by the wall, though nothing has grown there since last season. But it gives you a reason to move, even without results. A skinny cat passes and stares at you. Its eyes are sharp but silent. It understands hunger, perhaps more than people do. You share your morning gruel leftovers with it. It eats slowly, without sound, then leaves. No thank you, but you do not expect one. Because in loneliness, you do not give to be repaid. You give because it is the only motion that keeps you alive. Time passes without direction. The sundial hanging on the outer wall of the house has lost its accuracy because its shadow always shifts before you can measure it. But you no longer care. Days are not divided by hours, but by weight. You know midday is nearly over when the pain in your back begins to move from your waist to your shoulder blades. Afternoon arrives like an uninvited guest, bringing a strange chill even though the sun hasn't fully set. The wind starts to blow through the cracks in the window, carrying with it the scent of earth and damp wood left in the attic corner. You sit again on your bed, no longer soft, and watch the small dots on the wall that were once paint now turn to mold and stains of time. Your hands begin to tremble, not from the cold, but from a tiredness that cannot be explained. Nothing frightens you more than losing control over your body. Because the body is the only thing you still have power over, though it slowly betrays you. You rub your knees, massaging them with old oil that has lost its scent. It heals nothing, but gives the illusion that you are still trying. There is no one to blame for this pain. Not God, not time, not the people who have left, because all of it simply follows its course. What remains is only you and a day that refuses to end. You decide to go outside for a while. The village roads have begun to empty, leaving only the footprints of the old pressed into the muddy earth. No one will greet you. The neighbors have grown used to avoiding your gaze. Not because you are frightening, but because they no longer know what to say to a widow who has lived too long. In their world, grief has an expiration. If you don't recover in time, your sorrow becomes something out of place. You walk along the edge of the fence, your fingers brushing the dry leaves hanging between the branches. In the distance, the sound of sheep not yet penned up rings like a song too lazy to finish. Behind the small houses, thin smoke begins to rise from stoves. The scent of burning wood seeps into your clothes, mixing with the smell of your own skin that has lingered too long without change. The sky starts to shift in color, turning into a shade of blue that leans toward gray. You stop beneath a tree you once planted with your husband, its trunk now thicker than your memory allows. Time waits for no one, but that tree, silently, has outgrown you. It has thrived, even though no one has paid it any mind. And now beneath it, you stand like a ghost who returned uninvited, only to remember something that cannot be undone. Your steps slow as you make your way back home. The wind has started to fall, slipping through the thin fabric of your clothes and delivering a cold like an unwanted message, but more like the rustle of nocturnal creatures and whispers of prayers spoken with hope nearly extinguished. You lie on your mat, thin and coarse, without protection from the cold air that drips slowly through the gaps in the roof. Sleep does not come as you wish. It waits until your body is tired enough to surrender. Then it takes you without the promise of dreams. In other homes, there are lights from still burning candles, the gentle voice of a mother soothing her child, the cough of the elderly filling the night, the sound of doors closing slowly so as not to disturb. But in your house, only silence, a silence not of peace, but of emptiness. In the middle of the night, sometimes there is crying in the distance. Unclear whether it's a child chilled by the wind or another woman like you who has lost everything. No one will ask. In this era, sorrow is not something to be solved. It is simply part of the air. You take a deep breath, trying to sleep while hugging your own arms. Maybe tomorrow you will be strong enough to ask the monastery for help. Maybe you will find a scrap of bread or a piece of cloth. You can still sew into a head covering. But that is for tomorrow. Tonight is too long to be faced all at once. So you close your eyes, not to dream, but to see nothing at all. In the distance, the church bell tolls slowly, signaling that night will soon arrive. No one waits for you at the doorstep. No child, no voice, no shadow of anyone ready to greet you. Only damp earth flooring and the sharp smell of rotting wood from walls worn down by unfriendly seasons. In the corner of the kitchen, the water vessel is nearly empty. You lift it gently, unhurried, because even water will not run from you. You know hunger will visit later, not like before. Now your stomach no longer growls. It simply contracts quietly, like memories disappearing without a trace. Outside, the sound of insects begins to rise one by one. They sing in a rhythm that does not care who listens. You sit near the small, unlit hearth. There is no more wood to burn. You simply hug your knees and lower your head, letting the evening light filter through the cracks in the wall and brush your face softly. Once, dusk was a time to wait for someone to come home. Now, it is just a color that arrives and leaves without meaning. Time moves on, like an old wheel that never stops, even though its direction no longer matters. At night, the sounds of the village change. No longer the clash of hoes against earth or the calls from the fields. When dawn begins to creep behind the hills, there is no celebration to mark the start of the day. Only a subtle change in the color of the sky and the sigh of morning wind carrying the scent of ash and dampness from the night before. You rise slowly, your body stiff, your neck aching, and the ever-loyal hunger still clinging to your belly. There is no rooster's crow to wake you, only a routine etched into your flesh like patterns on old wood. Another day has come, and it offers nothing new. Outside, dew has yet to lift from the grass, and your bare feet touching the wet earth remind you that you are still alive. That alone, nothing more certain than that. Some women pass by with baskets on their backs, avoiding eye contact because even a glance can be a burden. You simply sit on the doorway's edge, smoothing your hair with fingers that have forgotten warmth. A piece of remaining cloth you roll and tie around your waist, though its color has faded and its edges are frayed. There is no mirror, but you know your face is starting to resemble your mother's in her final years. A face that often held unspoken questions, but never enough strength to search for answers. From afar, the sound of church bells rings. Not a call to hope, just a reminder that time moves on without waiting for anyone. And you return inside not because someone is waiting, but because the world outside offers you no place. Inside the nearly ruined hut, the air is never truly fresh. The damp wooden walls give off the scent of earth and mold that has become a permanent backdrop to life. There is no fireplace to chase away the cold, only old ashes from the last fire you gently blow on, hoping some ember remains. But the embers died long ago, just like the light behind your eyes. You walk slowly, avoiding the cracked floorboards, knowing that one wrong step could make you fall, and no hands would reach to help you up. There is no water in the house, so you carry a small clay jug toward the old well by the roadside. The path is muddy, filled with animal waste, and every step sinks your toes into a cold that bites. At the well, a line has already formed. Some children and women stand silently, not speaking, only staring at the ground, as if they know that even words must now be rationed. You stand behind them, listening to the sound of water falling into buckets like the sky crying softly. The water is murky, sometimes discolored, yet still cleaner than what flows through the ditch behind your house. When it's your turn, you bend down, drawing water with hands that tremble from the cold. Drop by drop, the water feels heavy, not because of its weight, but because of the small hopes you've hung on it. At least today, you can wash your face, boil some gruel, and maybe cleanse the small wound on your foot. 3 small things, enough to give you a reason to endure one more day. You return home with a jug of water not quite full, because half of it spilled when you slipped a little on the slick road. But it's all right. A little water is still better than none at all. There is no one to share it with. No small voice asking for a portion. No other hand reaching out to the rising steam from that bowl. There used to be, once, your child's laughter filled the corners of this room, and their tiny hands touched yours in a way that made the world feel less cold. But the winter 3 years ago took them, quietly, in the middle of a frozen night. They had a fever, and their body turned blue before dawn. There was nothing you could do but hold their hand until it stopped moving. Now, you eat in silence. The bland porridge is warm, and that alone is something to be grateful for now. You no longer wish for tasty meals or full tables, just not to feel hunger until night falls. After eating, you wrap up the barley you didn't use, tucking it in a cloth pouch and hiding it beneath a floor tile, as if concealing a secret from a greedy world. Then you sit again, your hands rubbing aching knees, and your mind drifts outside the house. You imagine the village from a distance with wheat fields seldom harvested by those who are old and slow. Because their young men have gone off to wars where even the name of the king who ordered it is unknown to them. The war is far away, but its effects are felt here, in the hungry stomachs, in the cracked windows, in the whispers of mothers slowly losing their children one by one. You do not curse the war because it has become too familiar. War is like a season, like winter or harvest, simply coming and going without asking. The only thing you resent is time, which keeps moving forward without ever looking back. Inside, a rat sneaks out of a hole in the wall and disappears behind a pile of old cloth that may have once been your wedding robe. You are too tired to chase it away, because the creature is no longer a threat, merely a part of the scenery that must be accepted. You light a small fire using damp wood that releases thick, bitter smoke. The smoke fills the room and makes you cough, but behind the coughing there's a sense of relief, because the smell of smoke means warmth will soon follow. You place a clay pot on the fire. Pour in water and a handful of leftover barley you've carefully saved over the past week. No salt, no spices, just water and broken grains. But the soft sound of boiling water feels like a lullaby for your constantly rumbling stomach. While waiting for the porridge to cook, you sit still, staring at the tiny crack in the wall where morning light filters in. Outside, the fog hasn't completely lifted. The village road appears empty, only occasionally disturbed by the sound of hooves carrying lords or messengers who will never stop at your hut. They are too high, too important, too far from someone like you. You are no one. Even the name you once wore as a wife is now just an echo in your heart, never spoken aloud by anyone else. Your life is a series of mornings that repeat, always in a motionless loop, as if even time itself has forgotten you're still here. When the porridge is done, you slowly ladle it into a wooden bowl with a crack along the rim. The midday sky looks dull through the slits of the wooden boards that cover the window. Wind from the fields carries the scent of rotting straw and wet wood smoke. Your steps carry you back to the hut, past rotting wooden fences, past bare trees that shiver in silence. On the muddy road, you see a small dead bird, its wings folded as if forced. No one will bury it, just like no one will bury your exhaustion. You return to your home and sit again in your corner. The hard bread on the table remains untouched. You are not hungry, only too tired to be hungry. The water in the wooden bowl is cold, but you wash your hands slowly, like an empty ritual that has become habit. There is no sound but your own breath and the rustle of wind knocking at the roof tiles. Then the church bell rings from afar, echoing gently like a memory from a past that does not want to return. You remember your husband once brought you an apple, just once, many years ago. The apple was small and nearly rotten, but his smile when he gave it to you felt like a gift from another world. Now, there are no apples, no smiles. Only the remains of a day that feels heavy, like a night arriving without stars. Sometimes you wonder silently if it will all end tomorrow or the next day. But even the hope of an end is a luxury an old widow cannot afford. You light a small candle, the only one left. Its flame flickers like it's afraid of dying too soon. You sit still, watching the flame. It dances softly in the cold air. And for a moment, there is a strange kind of peace. Not because of joy, but because everything has become too quiet to be disturbed by pain. You stand slowly, your knees clicking, and begin to wrap the worn-out shawl you've mended many times. Time to walk to the village, not for shopping, since you have no coin, but simply to walk slowly along the dirt road to see the world still existing beyond your wooden walls. The road is muddy and frozen, faint footprints of old shoes left behind. In the distance, two young boys play with sticks and stones, laughing until silenced by a mother's shout. You keep walking, greeting the silence that does not answer. Some houses are already empty, abandoned, or claimed by sickness. Their windows are open or broken, like eyes that can no longer see. At the tiny market, now reduced to 3 stalls, another old woman stands behind piles of worn cloth and wilted onions. You look at each other, but do not speak. What is there to say between two bodies equally hungry? You sit on the edge of a stone near the dry well and listen to the sound of passing hooves. Perhaps a noble's messenger, perhaps just a courier. They do not see you. You are like a shadow that has stood too long, not real enough to chase away, not important enough to greet. Then you bow your head, take in the cold, sharp air, and look at the ground. There is an old blood stain there, maybe from a goat, maybe from something larger. No one asks. No one wants to know where the unexplainable stains come from. This world does not ask you to understand, only to endure. As the evening begins to creep in, the sky turns a pale gray that promises nothing. Outside, night has fully arrived. The village is frozen in a silence that borders on sacred. No cartwheels, no children's laughter, even the dogs have refused to bark tonight. Your stomach has been empty since yesterday afternoon, and the biting morning air only sharpens that hunger. No one wakes you, no one waits for you, and no one cares whether you rise or not. You open your eyes simply because your body demands it. The floor is still cold when your feet touch it. You wear the same clothes as yesterday because there are no other options. The smell of fabric unwashed since last season has now become part of your own breath. You glance toward the kitchen corner, hoping for a crumb of bread or a few dried beans. There is nothing. You drink water, then sit on a wobbly stool, trying to steady the spinning in your head. Outside, the day remains gray, and the clouds hang low like an old cloth pinned to the sky. Some neighbors have started their day, but none greet you. A poor widow is not part of conversation. You are the quiet border of their social world. Occasionally, someone glances your way, but quickly looks away, as if your suffering might be contagious. In this world, loss is seen as shameful if kept too long. If you still mourn after a season, they call you weak. If you stay too silent, they suspect bitterness. So you learn to show nothing. No pain, no sorrow, no hope. Just an empty form moving through time like a shadow. The day passes, but brings nothing with it. You sweep the floor, clean the ashes, sit again, waiting for the next meal, which may or may not arrive. Everything is wrapped in a cold fog and tight silence. You sit near the candle, watching its flame shrink little by little. In the sky, the moon has not appeared, as if it forgot to rise tonight. You try to sew, but the threads are too thin to see in such dim light, and your fingers are too stiff from the air. So you stop and simply sit again, listening to the ticking of time that you cannot see. Sometimes you think you hear someone at the door, but no one comes. It is only the wind creeping through the cracks in the wall. You do not get up to check. If a ghost were to visit tonight, you would not refuse it. Perhaps you think widows like you are more often visited by spirits than by people. At least spirits do not ask for food, do not bring debt, and do not look at you with pity. In the dark, you imagine the faces that have gone. Your child dead from fever. Your husband buried too quickly in soil too hard. You do not cry tonight, not because you are strong, but because tears, too, have become a luxury you could not afford to keep. There is a rat in the roof, gnawing at wood. It no longer frightens you. Fear, like grief, has lost its place. You simply exist here, between life and death, in a space not much larger than a coffin. But the night is long, and sometimes long is the only thing that remains. The next morning, you wake not because of sunlight, but because of hunger. Evening approaches, and the sunlight that once slipped between the cracks of the clouds begins to fade. In the distance, the church bell rings softly. Not to celebrate anything, but merely to mark the passing of time. The path is quiet again, as if the village has forgotten it ever lived. The small fire you had lit earlier is now out, leaving behind nearly dead embers. Inside, the air is colder. The wind slips through the cracks in the walls, biting the skin and carrying the scent of a changing season. You sit on the floor, knees pulled to your chest. Your hands touch the cold, hard earth. These hands once held a child. This home was once filled with small voices and laughter. But now those sounds are just faint echoes, and no one answers when you call silently. You pull out a piece of dry bread from a cloth pouch. It tastes bland, hard, but it's all you have. Your stomach no longer protests. Hunger has become an old companion, no longer an enemy. In the corner of the house, an old cloth hangs as a curtain. Behind it lies a bed of straw and animal hide, dull and cold, but enough to lie down. You have little strength left. Night falls like descending fog, slowly, soundlessly, covering everything. In the distance, you hear a wolf's howl, or maybe it's only a shadow of thought. It makes no difference. You close your eyes, and all becomes dark. No comforting embrace, no voice promising a better tomorrow. Only a shivering body, a silent soul, and a hope that stopped growing long ago. If this is the end, it comes not as a tragedy, but as a soft whisper, like the breeze rustling through twigs, like a shadow disappearing without trace. With that sound, you step outside, walking slowly along the dirt road lined with dry mud and scattered straw. You have no destination. No place awaits you. But staying inside makes breathing feel heavier. A few children run past you, laughing, unaware that their lives will soon look much like yours. A man pushes a creaking wooden cart. On it lies the body of an old woman wrapped in linen. A widow too, they said. Died in her sleep, no one knows when. They found her only because the stench became unbearable. No ceremony, no weeping. just the lifting of a body and a simple burial in a quiet field beyond the village boundary. You stand at the edge of the road, watching the silent procession pass. Not a single person looks at you. And as the cart disappears down the path, nothing changes. Life remains quiet. The world keeps turning, recording none of the names left behind. You sit on a large stone near an old tree. From there, you can see the valley. A thin fog begins to descend, floating above the ground like restless spirits. The wind moves gently, carrying the wet scent of grass. Inside your chest, something settles. Not sadness, for tears dried up long ago. Not anger, because even hope has grown too weak to birth anger. Only silence, growing like roots in your body, slowly swallowing all sound from the past. Time keeps moving, and your body eventually returns to the small hut as night slowly descends. But the night doesn't end with silence. In the freezing dark, your body stays awake longer than hope. Sleep is not a gift that easily comes to an old widow with no one. Your thoughts smolder like slow-burning coals, unraveling memories one by one. You remember when you first came to this village as the wife of a young man? His face has long faded, but the way he said your name, the way he closed the door when storms came, still lingers faintly within you. He died when the season of black fever arrived. His body was wrapped in cloth, taken away with dozens of others, buried in a place you never knew. No cross, no marker, only earth. Since then, the world began to shrink. You worked drawing water from the river, sewing tattered clothes for farmers, receiving payment in the form of rotten vegetables or scraps of wheat. No one saw you as part of anything whole. Even in the church, you sat at the very back because widows had no place among hope and celebration. The children who once called you aunt now avoid you, afraid of catching misfortune. You've become just another shadow living on the edge, part of the scenery but not part of the story. That is the fate of women who lose everything. They are not killed. They are left alive, slowly forgotten. Like a candle that keeps burning in an empty room. Like a voice no one calls for. Sometimes, in the middle of a truly silent night, you walk outside your little hut. The sky seems nailed with unmoving stars, but you know how far they are from your reach. On the ground around you, the grass has died since last season, and the bones of animals lie half-rotten, half-buried among cracked earth. No sound except the wind, sometimes carrying a scent of burning from a nearby village. Perhaps from a granary consumed by hunger. You sit on the ground, touching the dust with your fingers, trying to recall something warm. But every memory has lost its heat. Your children, if there ever were any, are gone without trace. Perhaps dead, perhaps sold, perhaps simply left and never returned. There are no letters, because letters are not written for people like you. Time is no longer a sequence of events, but a loop that never carries meaning. Morning is not a beginning, only a pause between darkness and more darkness. And you sit there, a widow in a world that never calls you by name. No one comes looking for you. No one asks if you are hungry or cold or even alive. Neighbors see you from a distance with eyes trained to view suffering as routine. No one is cruel to you, but no one cares either. In this world, indifference cuts sharper than hatred. It wraps around you like fog, seeping slowly into your bones, until you yourself forget that you were once important to someone. When dawn finally arrives, it brings no warmth. Only light slowly slipping through the cracks in the mud walls, casting a pale line across the dirt floor. In the distance, the church bell chimes softly, marking a time that holds no meaning for you. Nothing has changed since dawn. You have not spoken to anyone, and no one has looked for you. The walls of your home keep the cold at bay, yet the air still slips in, settling into your weary bones. You lie down on the hard mat, wrapping yourself in the cloth that once belonged to your husband. His face is fading in your memory, only fragments of lines and shadows appearing in dreams that never last. Outside, the world sleeps in an indifferent silence. No fire, no song, no bedtime tale. Only your breath, slow and heavy, fills the empty room. In the past, night was a time to sit together, to share warm food and gentle words. But now, night is both refuge and reminder of the long silence. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to blur out reality. The world does not remember you, but neither does it despise you. It merely allows you to exist, like a small stone on a road no one ever clears. And there, in that quiet and tender darkness, time shrinks. Everything becomes small, becomes distant, becomes almost unreal. If tomorrow does not come, perhaps no one would notice. But night still comes, and in its dark embrace, all suffering sounds like the whisper of wind. Unremembered, uncomplained, simply accepted. Quietly and forever. No sound of roosters crowing because you have no chickens. No bubbling pot because there's nothing left to boil. You sit quietly, looking at the empty space that was once filled with something. Maybe laughter, maybe presence. But all of it has dissolved with the passing seasons, leaving no trace. Outside, the world begins to move slowly, as if reluctant. The sound of wagon wheels, the thud of heavy footsteps, a distant cow sneezing in a faraway field. All of these are the songs of mourning for those who still have a reason. But you only watch the day like staring at a stone wall. There are no tasks, no calls, no needs demanding your response. You are not needed, not awaited, not counted. Perhaps what remains of you is only breath, and even that you do not always notice. You walk slowly outside, see dew clinging to the tips of dead grass, and ask yourself silently if the world would change if you vanished today. But even that question has no direction. It simply drifts, like dust that never settles. You go back in, sit in the same corner, and time folds itself once more into a long silence. Nothing is new. Nothing ends. Only your body slowly dissolving into a space that grows more foreign, more hollow. Night falls again, like a curtain drawn without a sound.